call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city is Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act in conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording process is posted in the meeting room. A participant sign-in sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks will be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Wilson. Present. Back. Here. Camper.
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Singleton.
Here.
Schmidt.
Here.
Hands.
The first item this evening is consideration of approval of draft minutes of April 18, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
The motion and second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
All in favor? Wilson. Back. Camper. Fritz. Miller. Singleton. Schmidt.
The next item this evening is the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
All in favor? Wilson. Back. Camper. Fritz. Miller. Singleton. Schmidt. Motion carries.
Next item is confirmation of mayor's appointments. We have the reappointment of Pat Codine and John Owen to the Community Development Block Grant Application Review Board for Economic Development.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
All in favor? Wilson. Back. Camper. Fritz. Miller. Singleton. Schmidt. Motion carries.
Item number 7, this is council to receive an update on Seward Regional Rail Campus Development. We have Jake here from Olson Associates.
Good evening. So, just to kind of give you an update on where we're at on the project. Last time we met, kind of gave an update on the traffic study and kind of where we're at with lots, and Tim Mettenbrink gave a presentation on some other items. And so since then, we got comments back from NDOR on the traffic study that we submitted for the access. Really nothing significant out of those comments. One that was kind of significant is when you do a left-hand turn lane on 15 to turn westbound into the commercial development, they also want a left-hand turn lane opposite that for alignment and safety issues. So there would be a left-hand turn to go east then. Other than that, there really weren't too many big comments from NDOR. We've since revised our traffic study and we'll submit to NDOR for the final traffic study. So that's kind of where we're at on that. I've met with John and Mel and kind of review the traffic study just so they're aware of kind of the impacts and everything else, and gotten comments back from them. Also met with Jonathan, who I thought might be here, but he said he might be a little bit late. He's in Milford. Kind of met with him on kind of some of the funding and other steps that have to go next as well. But really looking for some direction as well as to kind of what our next steps are. As you might recall, it's not real clear what our first step will be, whether it's to construct the infrastructure for the development or purchase the next piece of land so that we can construct the access, because as you know, the ultimate access would require the purchase of that land to the south, unless we were to build the access where we can right now and then move it later, which is a little, well, it's quite a bit more costly. So we've got some options on the table, and just kind of want to see where you guys want to go with it. You want to look at building the ultimate access which would require the acquisition of that property. We could also build some of the infrastructure, but not the access road to 15 for the development, at which case, we're not doing the permit, which, you know, we would need one once traffic picks up, on that access point. Any thoughts on where we wanna go?
Yes, Sid?
I just have a question. What kind of timeline would there be as far as developing the access point, you know, the ultimate one? You know, from the time that we said, okay, we wanna do this,
Sure.
to the point where it actually could be done?
Sure. So the permitting process takes a little while, and you are admitted that they're not very quick with getting those in and out. We would need a contract to, develop the construction documents for constructing the actual access. That's required as part of the permit. And then the permitting process would come after that. So probably a couple months to develop the construction documents and a couple months for the permitting process. So we're looking 4 months out if we decide to go with the permit and build the access wherever.
So then the east, I guess southbound east access, would that basically turn into where like a Rummary's is, or would it just go to the dump? Yeah, I mean,
Oh, the.
if they're
one
gonna
on the
require
east side.
an opposite
That's
one,
the
yeah.
Yep, yep, they would require us to realign that road, so we would have to make an acquisition on that side, or is that city owned? That might be city, no, it's not, the dump is, okay.
Was
So-
it the burn pile
Gotcha,
is what's back there?
gotcha.
So, I guess where I was going with that is since the current access to the burn pile is still kind of on the downslope of that viaduct, right?
Yeah.
Would we have to create a new access point,
Yes,
like opposite of where ours
Yes.
would be?
yes,
So it'd be a different one?
yes.
Okay,
That one, the current one would be closed.
okay, that's what I wanted to know, okay.
Yep.
Well, the current access right now to the west side is sufficient until you to a certain point where
Right.
traffic would dictate that.
Correct.
So I don't think we have to worry about making a decision tonight. My guess would be is that just something to be thinking about as we proceed down this course, as lots become available and sold, then we can make a determination based on
Okay,
on where we're at, that I assume we would probably have discussions with the Rail Campus Committee as well as these things start happening, and then the committee can make a recommendation to the council as far as how to proceed when the timing feels appropriate. Is that what anyone else would be thinking along those same lines?
I'm thinking on the same line.
Okay,
all right.
so when no one says anything, do I just assume everyone agrees with me? Is that how that works? No.
Sure.
John, did you wanna add something?
Yeah, I just was wondering if you could kind of explain to them, when we do the formal access into how that smaller bridge to the south, in front of the old Walmart fits into the program, because if we do that before, they're ready to reconstruct Highway 15, are we responsible for the?
Yes, yep, and that's why, yeah, that is more cost.
Penalty's gonna be priced.
And that, I think there needs to be more discussion with NDOR on that, honestly, because there is an ultimate 4-lane section. From what Tom Goodbarn says, there's just not funding for it right now. So to put a widening ahead of an ultimate 4-lane section seems a little redundant and waste of cost. So, I think there's definitely a need for a discussion on that. But from what I'm hearing, that we do want to develop and build the infrastructure of the developments, and then access comes later, utilizing the current access. That's what I'm,
Yeah, I think that's what we would be saying at this point,
okay,
because the selling of the lots provides funding.
yes,
The
absolutely.
funding source, otherwise we're putting a lot of money out front before we have anything to really show for it.
Yep.
and if it's not necessary to, to put money into the interims, in order to attract people, but I don't get the sense that there is. I think with talking with Jonathan in the past, I think there's interest with the current access, although the ideal access would wanna follow at some point.
Yep.
Sooner than later.
Okay.
That's based on our conversations.
Okay.
Is that something you're comfortable with?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, does anyone on the council wanna add anything to that? Any more questions for Jake? You good? Yeah, that's
For
it.
you, Josh, what is the term again for the Eggers option? Is that
Do you want
3
it up?
years or something?
No, it was only like 18 months.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, it was 18 months?
I wanna say it's like next February. I don't have that in front of me. I wanna say February.
It's either February, March.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, thank you for coming this evening and presenting. And we'll be in touch.
Okay, the next step for us would be developing those construction documents for the infrastructure.
Okay.
Our current scope is including all the platting process, so that'll be, would you like an amendment to our current contract or a whole new contract?
Does it matter? Do we have a preference? What would you normally do in that situation? Or Kelly, do you have a preference?
Probably an amendment to that contract.
That's what I mean, that's easiest, because we already have an open contract. If it was
Okay.
closed, that would
Right.
be different.
Okay,
So,
sounds good. Well, thank you.
well, I've got these updated plans in case anyone wanted to see them. You want me to distribute? If anyone wants to see them, I can put them right here.
Sure, yeah, we'll put him like Chris, we'll put him in charge. Be the
That's-
custodian.
I just kinda wanted to make sure everyone saw the last version before we move ahead. So,
Perfect.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake. Next item number 8 is consideration of a resolution reserving 5 parking spaces for the west side of the Justice Center, 200 block of South 9th Street for police vehicles. I believe we have someone representing the sheriff's office.
I was just here if you had questions.
Okay. Would you mind just coming up to the podium in case there's questions? John, you wanna join them?
Yeah.
And John, just maybe just give a real brief explanation. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I understand you, I mean, how many reserved spots were there by the courthouse? Were there a couple?
There were two.
Two, okay. So this is similar to, the function is similar to that, is you wanna have access
Yes.
for, I assume, transporting individuals?
It'll be transporting and for easy access to exit the building on emergency calls.
Okay,
The sheriff's office is there, the jail's there. We won't be taking people to the courthouse, so we don't want those 2 stalls anymore. We just want these 5, which will be 2 on the south, the 2 handicap, and then the next 3.
okay.
And the further north you go will all be public.
And for a record, you just state your name and your address?
I'm sorry, I'm Dave Wood.
Thank you.
The sheriff's office.
Appreciate it. Did John?
Yeah, my first question is, so if we're gonna make new reserves down there, are you gonna remove them from the courthouse?
Yes.
then? And how many are you gonna remove from the courthouse?
Well, there's only 2 there and both of them will be removed. But we can't remove them yet because we don't know when to move.
Okay, well, I'm just wanting to be,
As soon as they get the move and transferred, then I'll be bringing them back. I'll vacate.
Chris?
Are these gonna be all day long reserved? I mean, we got the BMW over there that
Yeah,
has
these will be all day
stuff
for
going on.
law enforcement.
And
Be
now
all
we're gonna take
law
5
enforcement.
spots off the street. And parking's limited over there.
How many spots are there going to be, I mean, are there
There's
currently
12 total,
along the side, so off the street? Okay,
and then we'll be taking 5 of them.
okay. Yes, John?
to Chris's point, it's on Wednesdays, and then there was a timeline on those signs. Is there gonna be timelines on those signs, like 8 to 5?
No,
Why couldn't there be?
it's 24-hour law enforcement. The reason for the courthouse signs, the courthouse was open 8 to 5. It was, those were reserved back in, I think, I'm gonna use my memory here, 1972. And it was for the transfer of prisoners from the old jail to the court. We had to have a place close by and that we didn't have to walk them across town.
And my next question, if we had 2 there, why do we need 5 down there?
Well, we're adding extra spaces so that we could use our city police cars in there. They'll be frequenting that.
all law enforcement. The sheriff's office always has law enforcement from the state patrol, the city police, Milford, game commission, and our own sheriff's office. 5 is we figure won't be enough in the long run, but however, it's enough for what we need to start.
Just to clarify, the resolution, I believe was sent to Sheriff Yocum, right, and was then returned to us. And it does say that no vehicle shall be parked or permitted to stand or stop from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, except for police vehicles bearing the markings. So that's how it's written in the resolution.
My concern is, continuing with this, is the VFW. You know, they were there first. And, you know, there's a lot of patrons, and most of those patrons are senior citizens. So we're gonna make them walk from below the VFW. I'm just, you know, they had parking there before.
The VFW
We're
used,
retaining the 2 handicap stalls there as well, as there'll be 5 other extra
Yeah.
stalls.
and the VFW patrons used the back side of the old sheriff's office in that whole parking lot, which was at the time the back of the jail and the extension office. And they used all of that,
That was extension office.
and sheriff's office.
Yeah, the majority of it though was extension.
Just on the south side of their building, the rest was sheriff's office.
But over
That was
the-
all private parking.
But over the years, I know that for a fact, because my kids were in 4-H, and you know that as well, that they got to utilize it
Yes.
after hours and pretty much all the time.
Yes.
Just to clarify though, are you comfortable with this? You mentioned earlier that there would not be a time limit. This does
I
say
wasn't
8.
aware that there was a time limit on what is
Yeah.
proposed here. The
Yeah.
courthouse, there was, it was
Yeah.
just the open hours of the courthouse.
Yeah, this currently says from 8 till 5, Monday through Friday, that only police vehicles basically would be allowed. And police is a generic term, meaning law enforcement essentially. But so I just wanna make sure you're aware that that's the resolution that's before the council.
If that's what it is, that's what it
Okay.
is. I was not aware
So,
of it.
John, to answer your question, there
Yeah.
is an 8 to 5,
Okay,
Monday
good,
through
good.
Friday on here. So that would not impact Saturdays or no, Sundays for that matter.
So it's just Monday through Friday, 8 to
Yeah,
5.
it's right, yeah,
Yeah.
Monday through Friday, 8 to 5.
Yeah, yeah, so I mean, I would approve that, I mean, if that's the way it's gonna be, but
Yeah.
it would
Anyone
be
else?
similar to what we had before.
Yeah, it's just a few more spots, but it's also a much bigger building with a lot more traffic, I assume, and there's the 911 call center there as well, so. Yeah, so is there any other questions or comments about this? Did you wanna add anything, or
No.
you're good?
No.
Okay.
Good.
I mean, I'll go ahead and make
So introduce the
introduce the
resolution.
ordinance,
In
stating-
resolution,
or the resolution stating that it's 8 to 5,
yeah.
Monday through Friday. I know, but I
Yeah,
would like to make sure.
okay, so just wanna reiterate that it is 8
Yes.
AM to 5 PM, Monday through Friday. That's the resolution that's introduced. The resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2017-09. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
So moved.
Do a motion and a second, is there any further?
I'll take the second. I think we both said move.
Okay, motion and a second, please register your votes. Please display the votes,
Bring it back, welcome back, Captain Fritz, Miller, Single, Schmidt, motion carried.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, number 9, this is a consideration of an ordinance on second reading for voluntary annexation of Ridge Run, 4th edition. This is north of Ridge Run and Goldenrod Lane. John Hughes is here to answer any questions. Unless there's any discussion on this, I would go ahead and do the second reading and then we would move on, but I wanted to give the council an opportunity in case they had any questions at this time. Seeing no questions, I'll go ahead and read the title. An ordinance declaring the annexation of certain contiguous and adjacent tracts of land, urban and suburban in character, more specifically the land included in Ridge Run 4th edition to the city of Seward, to the corporate limits of the city of Seward, Nebraska, and extending the limits thereof accordingly, to describe the real estate to be annexed and its boundaries, to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form, to provide for a time when this ordinance shall take effect. This is the second reading, and we'll do the third reading presumably at our next council meeting. Next item. Number 10, consideration of an interlocal agreement with the Upper Big Blue Natural Resource District for construction of a hiking biking trail around the city. John, did you want to take that?
Sure. We met with the Upper Big Blue, made a presentation to them. Actually, it's been a couple of presentations to them. And they decided to, we had an agreement at one point in time to get $75,000 for the construction of the trail once it started. That agreement had lapsed, and we went to reinitiate this agreement again, and in the meantime, we asked for an additional $75,000. And thanks to the mayor and some of the presenters, they granted us the 150 instead of the 75.
And just to clarify, the reason it had expired was because the original project was just for the next leg, which would have been of total of three, the first leg being already completed. The second leg was where that agreement came into play. Well, because in the meantime we added in the third leg to complete the trail, it took longer, and that's the reason why it expired. And the argument was before the Upper Big Blue NRD was, since we're doing basically the next two legs in one try, if 75,000 was agreed upon for this leg, presumably we would have asked for 75,000 or another number for the final leg. Would they consider doing basically fronting both of those dollar amounts for this leg? And so that's what they took a couple votes to get there, but we got there, and so that's how we ended up with the $150,000. Now the only caveat is that they were very concerned about using eminent domain for this project. We don't intend to use eminent domain, but their concern was that if for some reason we did use eminent domain to acquire any of the property, that we would have to go back to the NRD and explain what happened and the rationale, and then they would decide whether to still grant the funding or if they would pull it. I think it kind of hinged on, are we talking about 10 feet, or are we talking about, a mile's worth? This is kind of where their concern was, and they're very sensitive to that. So we were trying to be very respectful of their concerns regarding that. And at this point, and John can tell you, there have been efforts made to try and avoid potential pitfalls when it comes to mapping it out. But ultimately, if we got to that point, we've already agreed with the state that we will do what it takes to finish this project, because so much has already been invested in this, that if we got to that point, that we would essentially have to do that in order to complete the trail, then we would. But again, I assured them, like I assure you, that's the last thing we want to do, and we'll do everything in our power to avoid that issue. But that was the only two changes from the last agreement to this agreement was the eminent domain language, and then the dollar amount going from $75,000 to $150,000. Any questions on that? And they have a big board, by the way. It's like 14 members. It was intense. Unless there's any questions, it is an ordinance, and so unless you have, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong line. Highlighted that wrong one. It's agreement, so just take a simple motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please register your vote. Please display the votes.
Nine in favor, welcome back, Campus Fritz, Miller, Single, Schmidt, motion.
Next item 11 is the assistant administrator's report.
Things as usual, city administrator Butcher starts tomorrow, will be in the office, so we're anxious to have him start. And we have a list of things for him to get working on.
Any questions or comments from Bonnie? If not, entertain a motion to accept the report.
So
Sure.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Nine in favor, welcome back, Campus Fritz, Miller, Single, Schmidt, motion.
Are there any future requests for council agenda items or administrative action?
I do wanna mention, Officer Dave Hoag retired from the police department, and his reception is tomorrow afternoon from 1 to 3 in the basement of the library. You can attend. Yes, that would be, did I jump it?
Yeah, any future requests for council agenda items or administrative action? Seeing none, announcement of upcoming events. Bonnie, do you have something? We do have Officer Hoag's retirement party, if you ever wanna make that tomorrow. That's the only item we have. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
All in favor, welcome back.
Thank you, have a good evening.